Tonight, we will drift gently for some of the ancient unsolved mysteries of the world, moving slowly, calmly, and without any need to solve them completely. There is something peaceful about old mysteries, especially the ones that have rested quietly for hundreds or thousands of years. They do not ask anything from us. They do not hurry. They simply remain, like stones in a field, like faded marks on a desert floor, like silent ruins under a wide evening sky. As we begin, you can let your thoughts become soft and loose. There is no need to remember every detail. There is no need to follow every date or every name. The stories will move slowly, from one place to another, from one ancient landscape to the next, and you may simply listen, in whatever way feels natural. Some mysteries are carved in stone. Some are written in languages we can no longer read. Some are hidden in the way people moved enormous blocks, or built great cities, or looked up at the stars. Many of these questions may one day be answered. Others may remain partly unknown, and that is all right. The unknown can be restful when we do not try too hard to grasp it. So for now, imagine the world long ago. Imagine quiet plains, dry deserts, green river valleys, distant mountains, and dark skies full of stars. Imagine people sitting near small fires, watching the same moon we see tonight. They had their own questions, their own hopes, their own ways of understanding the world. Some of what they made has endured. Some of what they knew has been lost. And in the space between what remains and what has disappeared, we find these gentle mysteries. We can begin in southern England, on a broad plain of grass, where the stones of Stonehenge stand in a careful circle. Stonehenge is one of the most familiar ancient monuments in the world, and yet even now, it keeps many of its secrets. The stones rise from the ground in a shape that feels both simple and thoughtful. Some are tall, upright stones. Some are laid across the tops of others, forming great stone doorways. Around them is open land, and above them is a sky that changes with the seasons. Stonehenge was built in stages, over many centuries. It was not made all at once, and it was not the work of a single lifetime. Generations came and went while the monument took shape. Some of the stones were brought from nearby areas, while others, called blue stones, came from much farther away, from Wales, more than 100 miles from the site. This is one of the quiet puzzles of Stonehenge. How did people, living around 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, move stones so heavy, across such long distances? They had no engines, no modern roads, no metal cranes. They may have used sledges, wooden rollers, ropes made from plant fibers, and the patient work of many hands. They may have traveled by land, or by water, or by some combination of both. But even if we can imagine how the stones were moved, another question remains. Why were these particular stones chosen? Why was so much effort given to this place? Many ideas have been suggested. Stonehenge may have been a temple. It may have been a burial place. It may have been a place of healing, or a place where people gathered for ceremonies linked to the sun and the changing seasons. The monument is aligned with the sunrise of the summer solstice and the sunset of the winter solstice. This suggests that the builders watched the sky carefully and understood the yearly path of the sun. Perhaps Stonehenge was a way of marking time. Perhaps it helped people feel connected to the turning year. Perhaps it brought communities together from distant places, allowing them to share food, rituals, stories, and memory. We do not know for certain, and so the stones remain, calm and still, holding many possibilities at once. They do not tell us everything. They simply stand in the wind, as they have stood for a very long time. From the green fields of England, we can move slowly to the warm sands of Egypt, where the pyramids of Giza rise on the edge of the desert. The Great Pyramid, built for the pharaoh Khufu, has been studied for centuries. It is made of millions of stone blocks, arranged with remarkable precision, Its sides face the cardinal directions very closely. Its shape is simple, steady, and enduring. For thousands of years, it was the tallest human-made structure in the world. Unlike some ancient mysteries, the pyramids are not completely unknown. Archaeologists have learned a great deal about them. They were royal tombs, built during Egypt's Old Kingdom. They were part of larger sacred landscapes, including temples, causeways, smaller pyramids, and cemeteries. Workers lived nearby in organized settlements, where they baked bread, brewed beer, shaped tools, and carried out the long work of construction. Yet even with all this knowledge, questions remain. How exactly were the largest blocks raised into place? What kinds of ramps were used? Were they straight ramps, zigzagging ramps, spiral ramps, internal ramps, or several methods used together? How was the labor organized so carefully? How did the builders maintain such precise measurements over such a vast structure? These questions are not impossible, but they are still not fully settled. The pyramids also invite a quieter kind of wonder. They show us that ancient people could plan across many years. They could gather workers, stonecutters, engineers, scribes, cooks, boatmen, and priests into one immense shared effort. They could use astronomy, geometry, and careful observation. They could transform the edge of the desert into a landscape of memory. The Great Pyramid has chambers and passages inside, including the King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber, and the Grand Gallery. Some shafts extend upward from the chambers, and their purpose has been debated. They may have had symbolic connections to stars. They may have helped in construction. They may have served purposes we do not fully understand. The pyramid does not speak in words. Its meaning was shaped by Egyptian beliefs about death, kingship, the sun, and the journey of the soul. Some of those beliefs are preserved in later texts and monuments. Some may have changed over time. Some may have belonged to the people who built the pyramid and are now only faintly visible. Still, the pyramids rest in the desert with great calm. By day they hold the heat of the sun. By night they sit beneath the stars. They remind us that even the most studied ancient places can keep a little of their silence. Now, drifting eastward, we come to the valley of the Indus River and to one of the earliest urban civilizations in the world. The Indus Valley Civilization flourished more than 4,000 years ago in what is now Pakistan and northwest India. Its cities, such as Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, were carefully planned. They had streets laid out in grids, baked brick houses, wells, drainage systems, and large public structures. The people of the Indus region traded over long distances, made fine beads and pottery, used standardized weights, and lived in cities that appear to have been organized and stable for many centuries. And yet, one of the greatest mysteries of this civilization remains its writing. The Indus script appears on small seals, tablets, pottery, and other objects. The signs are often short, arranged in brief sequences. Some show animals, such as bulls, elephants, rhinoceroses, and creatures that may be mythical. Above or beside these images are signs that look like a writing system, but no one has yet been able to read them with certainty. The difficulty is partly because the inscriptions are short. There is no long text like a book or a royal inscription. There is no known bilingual inscription, like the Rosetta Stone, to help scholars compare one language with another. We do not know for sure what language the signs represent, or even exactly how the system worked. Some researchers believe it was a true writing system. Others have suggested it may have been a system of symbols used for names, goods, clans, titles, or rituals. Many careful studies have been done, comparing patterns, sign frequencies, and possible meanings. But a widely accepted decipherment has not yet arrived. This means that the people of the Indus cities remain unusually quiet to us. We can see their streets, we can see their bricks, their wells, their seals, their jewelry, and their tools. We can study their trade routes and their crafts, but we cannot yet hear their words. There are other mysteries too. The civilization seems to have changed gradually. After about 1900 BCE, many cities were abandoned or transformed. Climate shifts, changing river patterns, trade disruptions, and social changes may all have played a part. There is no simple story of sudden collapse. Instead, there is a long, slow transformation, like a river changing course across a plain. The Indus world is a peaceful mystery to contemplate. Its cities were not dominated by huge palaces or obvious royal tombs, at least not in the way we see in Egypt or Mesopotamia. The structure of power there remains unclear. Their religious beliefs are also difficult to interpret. Small figurines, animal motifs, and seals give hints, but not certainty. So the Indus Valley remains an ancient world seen through brick and symbol, through water channels and carved seals, through signs we cannot yet read. It is a reminder that writing can survive and still be silent. From the river cities of the Indus, we can travel in our imagination to the dry coast of Peru, where vast drawings lie across the desert floor. The Nazca Lines were made between roughly 500 BCE and 500 CE by people who lived in the arid plains of southern Peru. From the ground, many of the lines look like simple paths or shallow trenches, but from above, they form enormous shapes, long straight lines, geometric patterns, and figures of animals and plants. There is a hummingbird, a spider, a monkey, a whale, a dog, and many others. The lines were created by removing the dark reddish stones on the surface of the desert, revealing lighter soil underneath. Because the climate is so dry, and because there is little rain or wind erosion, the lines have remained visible for many centuries. One of the gentle puzzles of the Nazca Lines is why they were made so large. Some can only be fully appreciated from high above. Today, people often see them from aircraft, but the Nazca people had no airplanes. This has led to many imaginative ideas over the years, but scholars generally look for explanations within the culture, landscape, and religious life of the people who made them. The lines may have been ceremonial pathways. People may have walked along them during rituals. They may have been connected to water, which was deeply important in such a dry region. Some lines point toward hills, water sources, or astronomical events, although not all alignments are clear or consistent. The animal figures may have held symbolic meanings. The spider, the hummingbird, the monkey, and other creatures may have been linked to fertility, rain, mountains, or the spirit world. The long straight lines crossing the desert may have helped organize sacred space, connecting places of importance across the landscape. What is calming about the Nazca Lines is their patience. They were made with simple tools, careful planning, and repeated movement across the ground. A person walking there long ago may not have seen the whole image at once. They may have known it through memory, through ritual, through shared understanding. Today, from above, the shapes appear clear and quiet against the desert. Their exact meanings remain partly unknown, but they speak of a culture that looked carefully at its surroundings and marked the land in a way that has lasted far longer than anyone may have expected. As we leave the dry plains of Peru, we can move much farther back in time, to southeastern Turkey, to a site called Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe is one of the oldest known monumental ritual sites in the world. It dates to around 9,600 BCE, long before the pyramids, long before Stonehenge, and even before widespread farming in that region was fully established. The site includes circular and oval enclosures made of stone pillars. Some of the pillars are T-shaped, and many are carved with animals, such as foxes, snakes, boars, birds, and scorpions. For a long time, many scholars believed that large temples and complex monuments appeared only after people settled into farming villages, produced surplus food, and developed social hierarchies. Göbekli Tepe complicated that picture. It suggested that hunter-gatherer communities, or communities in transition toward farming, could organize large building projects and create richly symbolic sacred spaces. This raises many gentle questions. Who built Göbekli Tepe? How were the people organized? Did groups gather there seasonally from different areas? Or feasts held there? Did shared rituals help bring communities together? Did the building of the site play a role in the development of settled life and agriculture? The carvings are beautiful and enigmatic. Some animals seem naturalistic. Others seem arranged in ways that may have symbolic or mythic meaning. The T-shaped pillars themselves may represent human-like figures, perhaps ancestors, spirits, or beings whose meanings are now lost. Another mystery is that some of the enclosures appear to have been deliberately buried. Over time, the site was filled in with soil, stones, animal bones, and other material. This careful burial may have been part of the site's ritual life, or it may have marked the closing of one phase and the beginning of another. Göbekli Tepe invites us to think about beginnings, the beginning of monuments, the beginning of gathering places, the beginning of traditions that may have shaped later villages and societies. Yet it also reminds us that beginnings are rarely simple. People had rich symbolic lives long before writing. They had memory, ceremony, skill, and cooperation. We cannot know exactly what was said or sung at Göbekli Tepe. We cannot know what stories were told beneath the open sky. But we can imagine people gathering there in the cool of evening, near carved stones, sharing food, watching fires burn low, and looking upward at the same stars that moved slowly above them. Now we can turn toward the Mediterranean Sea, and to a very different kind of ancient mystery, small enough to be held in the hands, yet complex enough to change how we think about ancient technology. The Antikythera Mechanism was found in a shipwreck near the Greek island of Antikythera in 1901. At first, it looked like corroded bronze fragments. Over time, researchers realized that the fragments contained gears, inscriptions, and carefully arranged mechanical parts. It is now understood to be an ancient Greek device dating to around the 2nd or 1st century BCE, used to model astronomical cycles. The mechanism could predict positions of the sun and moon, phases of the moon, eclipses, and perhaps the timing of athletic games and calendars. It used interlocking bronze gears with a level of sophistication that surprised many scholars. Nothing quite like it, with such complexity, is known from the ancient world until many centuries later. The mystery is not whether the mechanism existed, it did. The mystery is how this tradition of mechanical knowledge developed, how widespread it may have been, and how much has been lost. Was the Antikythera Mechanism one of many such devices? Was it a rare and exceptional object? Who made it? Was it connected to a particular workshop, a school of astronomy, or the work of thinkers influenced by Greek mathematics? Ancient Greek scholars knew a great deal about astronomy and geometry. They observed patterns in the heavens, calculated cycles, and created models to explain celestial motion. The Antikythera Mechanism translated some of that knowledge into bronze gears, allowing time and sky to be represented through turning wheels. It is a quiet reminder that the ancient world was not simple. Knowledge did not always move in a straight line from less to more. Sometimes techniques were developed, used, admired, and then lost. Sometimes an object survives by chance, underwater, hidden in a wreck, while most other examples disappear. Researchers continue to study the mechanism, using imaging technologies, careful reconstructions, and analysis of the inscriptions. Each study brings more understanding, but also more appreciation for the skill of its makers. It is pleasant, in a calm way, to imagine someone turning the mechanism long ago, watching small pointers move across dials, seeing the moon wax and wane in miniature, and understanding that the heavens followed cycles, slow and repeating, like breathing. From this small bronze device, we can drift across the ocean to a remote island in the Pacific, known as Rapa Nui, or Easter Island. Rapa Nui is famous for its moai, the large stone statues that stand or once stood across the island. The statues were carved from volcanic stone, mostly from a quarry at Rano Raraku. Many have long faces, heavy brows, straight noses, and calm expressions. Some were placed on stone platforms called ahu, facing inland, as if watching over communities. The Moai are not a mystery in the sense of being unknowable, and they were part of ancestor traditions, social identity, and sacred authority. But many questions remain about their construction, transport, and changing meaning over time. Some Moai weigh many tons. How were they moved from the quarry to different parts of the island? Oral traditions say the statues walked. This may reflect a real method of transport. Some researchers have tested the idea that teams of people could move upright statues by rocking and guiding them with ropes, making them sway forward, step by step. Other methods may also have been used, including sledges or rollers in some cases. The island's history has often been told as a simple story of ecological collapse, but modern research suggests a more complex picture. Deforestation did occur, resources changed, social pressures existed. European contact later brought disease, slave raids, and severe disruption. The older story of a sudden self-destruction is now treated with more caution. The Moai remain a symbol of endurance and change. Some were toppled in past conflicts or during periods of transformation. Some have been restored. Many still stand near the sea or on slopes, their backs to the water, their faces turned toward the land and the people they were meant to protect or represent. One mystery of Rapa Nui is the island's script, called rongorongo. It appears on wooden tablets and other objects, marked with lines of glyphs. The signs include human, animal, plant, and geometric forms. No one has yet deciphered rongorongo with confidence. It may be a writing system or a memory aid connected to chants and genealogies. The number of surviving texts is small, and the cultural disruptions of the 19th century greatly reduced the continuity of knowledge needed to read them. Like the Indus script, rongorongo is a voice at the edge of understanding. It is visible, but not yet readable. It suggests that memory was once stored in signs, in rhythm, in trained recitation, and in wood touched by careful hands. Rapa Nui sits far from other lands, surrounded by the wide Pacific. Its mysteries feel spacious and quiet. Stone faces, grass-covered slopes, sea wind, and undeciphered signs all belong to a place where human creativity met isolation, resourcefulness, and deep tradition. Now, let us return gently toward the ancient Near East, to think about one of the oldest and most famous undeciphered and partially understood worlds, the world of early writing and lost languages. Not all ancient writing is a mystery. Egyptian hieroglyphs have been deciphered. Cuneiform used in Mesopotamia has been read for many generations now. But even where writing can be read, the ancient world still holds uncertainties. There are languages known only from a few inscriptions. There are names of peoples whose stories are fragmentary. There are texts that refer to places we cannot identify with certainty. One gentle example is the Sea Peoples, groups mentioned in Egyptian records around the end of the Late Bronze Age, roughly the 12th century BCE. Egyptian inscriptions describe conflicts with groups bearing names such as the Shurdan, Shekelesh, Peleset, and others. Around the same broad period, several powerful societies in the eastern Mediterranean experienced decline or transformation, including the Mycenaean palace system, the Hittite Empire, and cities in the Levant. For a long time, people tried to explain this period as the result of invasions by the Sea Peoples. Today, scholars tend to see it as more complex. Climate stress, drought, internal unrest, trade disruptions, earthquakes, migrations, and warfare may all have played roles. The Sea Peoples may have been migrants, raiders, displaced communities, mercenaries, or several different groups moving for different reasons. The mystery lies in the lack of a single simple answer. The end of the Bronze Age was not one event, but a web of events. Systems that had depended on long-distance trade and palace administration became fragile. When several pressures arrived together, old structures changed. This kind of mystery is slow and layered. It is not one hidden chamber or one lost object. It is a historical mist where many causes overlap. Ancient records give one view, often from the perspective of kings. Archaeology gives another, through burned layers, abandoned buildings, pottery changes, and shifts in settlement patterns. The sea peoples themselves remain partly unnamed, partly visible, and partly unknown. They remind us that ancient history is often made of movement. People moved because of need, pressure, hope, and opportunity. They crossed seas, entered new lands, settled, fought, merged, and disappeared into later cultures. And so, even an inscription carved to celebrate victory can become centuries later a quiet doorway into uncertainty. From inscriptions and migrations, we can move to another ancient mystery. High in the Andes, among the ruins of Tiwanaku, near Lake Titicaca. Tiwanaku was an important civilization in the highlands of what is now Bolivia, flourishing roughly between 500 and 1000 CE, though its roots are older. The site includes stone platforms, sunken courts, carved monoliths, and gateways made from finely worked stone. The most famous is the Gateway of the Sun, carved from a single block, decorated with a central figure and rows of winged beings or attendants. The builders of Tiwanaku created impressive architecture in a challenging environment, at high altitude, where nights can be cold and farming requires careful adaptation. They developed raised fields, managed water, grew hardy crops, and built a religious and political center that influenced a wide region. Some mysteries of Tiwanaku involve its stones. Large blocks were cut and shaped with precision, fitted together using techniques that still impress modern observers. How were they quarried, moved, and placed? What tools and methods were used? As with many ancient sites, the answers likely involve skill, time, organization, and deep practical knowledge, rather than any single lost secret. Another mystery is the meaning of its carved figures. The central figure on the Gateway of the Sun may represent a deity linked to the staff god tradition, also seen in other Andean cultures. The imagery may relate to agriculture, the sun, the calendar, or cosmic order. But without a full writing system to explain these symbols, interpretations remain careful and incomplete. Tiwanaku also changed and declined, for reasons still debated. Environmental change, drought, political shifts, and social reorganization may all have contributed. The site did not simply vanish, but its central power faded, and later Andean cultures inherited and reinterpreted parts of its legacy. In the calm, thin air near Lake Titicaca, Tiwanaku stands as a reminder that high mountain civilizations were inventive, resilient, and deeply connected to their landscapes. Its stones are quiet, but they carry the memory of people who lived with the seasons, the lake, the cold nights, and the bright highland sun. Now let us move softly to one of the most delicate kinds of mystery, the mystery of ancient astronomical knowledge. Across the world, ancient people watched the sky. They watched because the sky mattered. It guided planting and harvest. It marked rituals and seasons. It helped travelers find direction. It gave stories a place to live. Many ancient monuments are aligned with solar or lunar events. Stonehenge, as we have already considered, relates to the solstices. Newgrange in Ireland, an older passage tomb, is aligned so that the rising sun at winter solstice sends light into its inner chamber. In Mesoamerica, temples and buildings often connect to solar cycles, Venus cycles, or important calendar dates. In Egypt, some temples align with the sun on particular days. The mystery is not that ancient people observed the sky. They clearly did. The mystery is how particular alignments were chosen, how they were measured, and what they meant within each culture. A sunrise on a certain day may be astronomical, but also agricultural, political, ancestral, or sacred. Newgrange is especially peaceful to imagine. Built around 3200 BCE in Ireland, it is a large circular mound with a stone passage leading to a central chamber. Above the entrance is a roof box, a small opening that allows sunlight to enter at dawn around the winter solstice. For a short time, light travels down the passage and touches the interior. We do not know exactly what the builders believed. The return of sunlight after the longest night may have symbolized renewal, rebirth, or the continuity of life. The chamber contained human remains, suggesting a connection between the dead, the ancestors, and the cycles of the sun. It must have taken careful observation to create such an alignment. People had to know where the sun would rise at that time of year. They had to design and build the passage accordingly. The result is not loud or complicated. It is a quiet meeting of stone, darkness, and morning light. Ancient astronomy was often like that: slow observation, repetition, watching the same horizon over many years, noticing where the sun pauses and turns, noticing the moon's path, noticing bright stars appearing before dawn. Knowledge grew through patience, and patience is one of the oldest human tools. From the sky we can return to the earth, and to the strange and beautiful question of lost cities. Many ancient cities were never truly lost to the people who lived near them. They were known in local memory, reused, visited, or woven into stories. But to outside scholars, they sometimes seem to reappear after centuries of silence. Their rediscovery often raised new questions. One such place is Great Zimbabwe, in southern Africa. Built between roughly the 11th and 15th centuries CE, it was a major center of power, trade, and craftsmanship. Its stone walls, made without mortar, curve and rise with remarkable skill. The great enclosure, with its high walls and conical tower, is especially well known. For a long time, outsiders refused to believe that Great Zimbabwe had been built by African people, an idea shaped by prejudice rather than evidence. Archaeology has clearly shown that it was created by the ancestors of the Shona people. Its mysteries are not about whether local people built it. They did. The more meaningful questions involve how the city was organized, what ceremonies took place there, how power was expressed, and how it connected to long-distance trade networks reaching the Indian Ocean. Gold, ivory, cattle, and trade goods all played roles in the world of Great Zimbabwe. Chinese porcelain, Persian ceramics, and other imported objects show that it was part of a wide network of exchange. Yet much of its political and spiritual life is not written down. It must be understood through architecture, oral tradition, artifacts, and landscape. The stone walls of Great Zimbabwe feel restful in thought. They were built stone by stone, fitted carefully, without mortar, with a rhythm that seems almost woven. They remind us that ancient mysteries can also be mysteries of recognition, of learning to see clearly what was always there. Another lost or half-hidden place is the city of Angkor, in Cambodia, the heart of the Khmer Empire. Angkor is not a single temple, but a vast urban landscape of temples, reservoirs, canals, roads, and settlements. Angkor Wat, the most famous temple, was built in the 12th century, and is aligned with great care. Its towers rise like a stone mountain, reflecting Hindu cosmology, and later Buddhist devotion. The mystery of Angkor includes the scale of its water management system. The Khmer created enormous reservoirs and channels to control and store water in a monsoon climate. For centuries, this supported a large population. But changing climate patterns, intense monsoons, droughts, maintenance challenges, and political shifts may have contributed to the city's transformation. Angkor was never completely forgotten. Monks and local communities remained connected to its temples. But modern research, including aerial mapping and LiDAR, has revealed how vast the urban landscape truly was. Forests that seemed empty were holding the outlines of roads, ponds, walls, and house mounds. This is a gentle kind of revelation, not a sudden answer, but a slow clearing of leaves. The past appears, not all at once, but gradually through patterns in the ground. As we move through these ancient mysteries, it is helpful to remember that not knowing is not the same as emptiness. Where certainty is missing, there can still be evidence, context, and careful thought. Archaeologists do not simply guess. They compare objects, study layers, date materials, examine landscapes, and test ideas. They ask what is likely, what is possible, and what remains unknown. And still, there are things that may never be fully recovered. The sound of a song at Göbekli Tepe, the spoken language behind the Indus seals, the full meaning of the Nazca hummingbird, the personal thoughts of a worker placing a stone at Stonehenge, the name of the artisan who cut gears for the Antikythera Mechanism. These absences can feel soft if we let them. They remind us that every human life contains more than what survives. Most gestures, conversations, meals, dreams, and quiet moments leave no trace at all. Yet people lived them fully. The ancient world was made not only of monuments, but of ordinary mornings, tired hands, family stories, rain, dust, hunger, laughter, and sleep. Perhaps that is why ancient mysteries are so comforting at night. They are large enough to hold our thoughts, but distant enough not to demand action. They invite us to wander slowly, and then let go. We can imagine Stonehenge under a pale winter sky. The stones are cold, and the grass is damp. The sun rises low, touching the horizon. People have gathered, perhaps in silence, perhaps with songs we cannot hear. We can imagine the pyramids at dusk, their sides turning from gold to gray. Workers have gone home to their bread and beer. The desert cools. The stars appear one by one. We can imagine Mohenjo-daro after sunset, with water drawn from wells, lamps glowing in brick houses, and seals resting on a table, marked with signs that no one today can read. We can imagine the Nazca Desert in the early morning, long lines stretching quietly across the plain, waiting for footsteps, waiting for memory, waiting for rain that rarely comes. We can imagine Göbekli Tepe in deep time, its carved pillars standing under an open sky, while people gather from the surrounding lands, carrying stories, food, tools, and meanings now lost. We can imagine the Antikythera Mechanism resting in a wooden box aboard a ship, its gears still, its bronze surfaces catching a little light, before the sea covers it for centuries. We can imagine Rapa Nui, surrounded by the Pacific, with moai standing inland, calm faces watching over villages, and wooden tablets holding signs that have not yet returned to speech. We can imagine Newgrange in darkness, until the solstice sun slowly enters the passage, a thin golden line moving through stone, touching the chamber after the longest night. Each place is different. Each mystery has its own shape, but all of them share something quiet. They show us that human beings have always reached beyond the immediate moment. They have built for the future, spoken to the sky, honored the dead, watched the seasons, crossed oceans, measured stars, and marked the earth. And now, tonight, we do not need to solve all of this. We can let the questions remain open. How did the stones move? Why were the lines drawn? What did the signs mean? Who turned the gears? What psalms were sung? What names have been lost? The questions can drift by like clouds, one after another, softly, slowly, without needing an answer. Ancient mysteries are patient. They have waited through thousands of sunrises and sunsets. They can wait a little longer. And as you listen, you may feel the edges of these old places becoming softer. The desert becomes quiet. The sea becomes quiet. The stones become quiet. The unread signs rest in the dark. The old cities sleep beneath grass, sand, forest, and stars. The world is very old, and the night is gentle. Somewhere far back in time, a person looks up at the moon and wonders. Somewhere else, a hand carves a symbol into clay. Another hand smooths stone. Another draws a line across pale ground. Another watches the horizon, waiting for the sun to return. They are gone now, but traces remain. Not everything, Just enough. Enough to wonder, enough to learn, enough to rest. So let the mysteries stay where they are, scattered across the earth, quiet and enduring. Let Stonehenge stand in its field. Let the pyramids hold the desert night. Let the Indus signs remain still on their seals. Let the Nazca Lines lie under the stars. Let Göbekli Tepe keep its ancient silence. Let the Antikythera gears turn only in imagination. Let the Moai gaze gently over the island. Let Newgrange wait for morning light. And here in the present, you can let your thoughts slow down. There is nothing more to do, nothing to arrange, nothing to solve. Only the soft movement of time, the old rhythm of questions, and the quiet knowledge that the world has always been filled with wonder. The mysteries remain, and the night continues. Slowly, gently, everything settles. The stones are still, the deserts are still, the old rivers are still, the stars are far away and calm.